Hello, VC people. Matt here. I hope everyone's having a happy Triduum. Hope you have a great Easter tomorrow. Hope everyone out there is staying safe and faring well and making do and getting through this strange time that we're stuck in right now. And thought I would just check in with yet another John Lennon album review. Been doing those in order of release. And so with this installment, we come to 1973 and the Mind Games album. This came out October 29th of that year. Chart wise, for an ex Beatle, maybe not so great, but for anyone else, pretty good. It got to number 9 in the United States, number 13 in England. This, not the album, I didn't get the album probably 1977 or so before I got the album, but I did get the 45 that year, 73 or 74. I got the 45, and that might be the first Beatles solo 45 that I ever got. I remember that year getting Mind Games, Live and Let Die, Band on the Run, Photograph, and You're 16. Matter of fact, I can remember going into the store and asking my dad, and he bought them for me because I was, 9 or 10 at the time. So I really liked the song Mind Games. We'll get to that in a minute. The rest of the album, when I finally got it 3 or 4 years later, wasn't really blown away with it back then. By that time I was, 13 or whatever. Through the years, though, it's grown on me. I like it quite a bit. It's not his best album, but it's a solid, good album. Popularity wise, it did okay. The title song was, remember hearing that on the radio a lot back when it came out. I don't remember ever hearing anything else from this on the radio years later on the Beatles channel, things like that. But at the time, I don't remember hearing any of the other songs, which is a shame because there's some really good songs on here. But I think maybe the disaster sometime in New York City a couple of years before, people were burned by Lennon music and weren't really ready to jump back in and take a chance on this, which had this come out before sometime in New York City, I think it probably would have been a bigger hit than it ended up being, unfortunately. Also, I don't know, maybe people were just a little Lennon fatigued by 1973 overall, and there was a new decade. I think sort of the Beatles magic that held over those first couple of solo albums by all four of them had pretty much dissipated by 1973. People were looking for, okay, we had the Beatles in the 60s. Now what's going to be the new thing? We had Bing Crosby, Sinatra, Elvis, the Beatles, so who's next? Turns out there really wasn't anybody next, but people didn't know that at that time. But David Bowie, Chicago, Led Zeppelin, Elton John, all sorts of things going on that were popular. New decade, people were sort of moving on. Beatles never really fell out of favor, but during the 70s they were less in favor for a big chunk of that decade, especially early on, I think, or middle of the decade. And so I think that's why some of these solo albums didn't do as good as, because you listen to them now and it's like, well, this is pretty good. It's surprising this didn't do better commercially. But I think that's sort of what was at play back then. Anyway, this finds Lennon in fighting to stay in America and going through the whole immigration thing. He breaks up with Yoko after the start of recording this album. That's sort of, I guess, why he's walking away from her. And so yeah, it's a cover. There's the front cover and there's the back cover, and you see the back cover, he's further in the forefront. He's moved away some. Never liked this cover. This might be probably the least favorite Lennon solo album cover, other than Two Virgins, obviously. But it's just pretty tossed together. Not a very good cover. It's kind of cheesy there. The picture of John, to me, always looked like it was just stuck in there, like it was photoshopped. I don't know if they had Photoshop in 1973, but it just looks kind of cheesy. I do like the two moons or the two suns, whatever that's supposed to be. Thought that was kind of a cool touch, but not one of my favorite of his album covers, front or back. Anyway, so let's get into the music of it, I guess. First song, side one, is the title track, Mind Games, which was a single. I was surprised to learn, because I do remember hearing this on the radio a lot back then, but it only got to number 18 in the United States and only 26 over in England. It's a good peace song, trying to get past just the games people play nonsense to get down to what matters type message to it, I think. Lennon produced this. I think he produced the whole album, but it's got a thick, beefy sound to it. Sort of sounds like a Phil Spector production, even though Spector didn't have anything to do with this album. Just a airy, dreamy, really nice song. Not exactly psychedelic, but sort of just a dreamy type song. I always liked it. I like it better than Imagine, truth be told. I have no problem with Imagine. It's a good song, but Mind Games always preferred to that. And like I said, I do remember having the 45 of this and playing it quite a bit back in 73. Maybe I picked it up in early 74. I don't remember exactly. And, didn't hear the rest of the album till 3-4 years later. So Mind Games, really good one. It's one of my favorite Lennon solo songs. I'm going to give that a 10. The second song is Tight Ass, or Tight As, Tight A $, however you want to say that. Another great one. It's a fun, bouncy rockabilly. It's kind of a throwaway song. It's just goofiness and having fun, but it's a nice relief from Lennon's ongoing political commentary. It's a nice relief from the ongoing John and Yoko diary of recording every single snippet of their life, which got kind of old, to be honest. Not much to the song, like I said, just a bouncy rockabilly song, but it's a fun ride. It's kind of a 50-ish sounding thing. John always said that his favorite music was 50s rock and roll. I think he said, "I don't like much else," was the quote, if I'm remembering correctly. Tight Ass is a good one. I'm going to give that a 9. Third song is, no idea how to pronounce this, but Asumason, I guess, which is Japanese. I think it's supposed to be Japanese for I'm sorry, which is why I'm sorry is as parentheses on the song title. It's a heavy blues ballad with even little tinges of country vibe here and there. John's in good voice, good guitar solo, really good album track. I'm going to give Asumason an 8 as well. So this album's off to a pretty strong start. 3 songs in on side 1, and we're doing well. And if I can get the page turned to see my notes, we'll see what happens next. One Day at a Time. It's one day, parentheses, at a time, close parentheses. This is sort of the John's parentheses album, because I think there's like 5 or 6 songs that have song titles that have parentheses in them. So I don't know what's up with that. It's a kind of a yin-yang lyrics. You're the fish and I'm the sea. You're the apple, I'm the tree, etc., etc. John singing in falsetto. Very 70s sounding production here. Which makes sense because it came out in 1973. Right down to the sort of a slightly lame sax son of a bitch.